Question: if your control link gets slammed mid-mission, how do your drones still hit a moving fuel tanker and a command vehicle within 3 minutes? At 6:13 a.m., Russian EW tried to blind the Mavic 3S along Highway E38. The convoy kept rolling, and then everything stopped. In this video, we break down the exact countermeasures: rapid frequency hopping, L-band control resilience, and IMU-based navigation that ignores GPS spoofing when it matters most. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. The convoy rolled, every feed jumped with static, and the room went quiet for half a second. Operators asked one question: is this weather or an electronic warfare net closing over the link? They didn't guess. They checked the pattern. 3 Mavic 3s sat at 1,000 feet in a wide triangle, spread to keep overlapping coverage. Thermal sensors painted the heat line of a Russian column moving toward a forward logistics hub. Engines glowed white, brakes pulsed, and a boxy vehicle near the middle threw a hotter signature than the rest. The triangle kept pace and the grid stayed steady until 6:13. Telemetry turned ugly in a blink. RSSI dipped across all stations. Latency started to wobble, and spectral noise rose in the control bands where the link normally runs clean. Abort would save airframes. Diagnose could save the strike. The operators read the board. Natural interference doesn't hit all nodes at once in the same way. This spike did each drone showed a synchronized drop, like someone throwing a blanket over the band and dragging it left to right. The noise lifted broad and flat, not peaky like a rogue Wi-Fi burst or a passing repeater, and the slope suggested a ground source sweeping through. Broadband rise across the expected control lanes, synced degradation on all 3 birds, and a directional skew that matched the convoy's right flank. Those are the telltales of active jamming, not rain, not fog, not distance. The likely culprit sat on a military truck in the column's middle third, an LE3 electronic warfare module on a Kamaz chassis. Its job is simple and mean: blind the control link and poison navigation by pushing false GPS frames into the sky. If it worked, the drones would drift or freeze, and the window would slam shut. The network didn't wait for guesswork. Onboard monitors flagged abnormal SNR deltas. The ground dashboards lit with red link health tiles, and the array spacing paid off. With 3 aircraft offset by hundreds of meters, the system could triangulate the noise origin by measuring how the interference hit each platform. The bearing lines crossed near that hotter vehicle in the column. Operators didn't need a perfect fix. They needed a fast one that put the threat inside the convoy's footprint. Those seconds mattered because of what rolled in that line. A lead armored vehicle set the pace. A fuel tanker carried the burn that could turn the road into a furnace. A command and communications truck kept the convoy's voice. Support trucks hauled parts, rations, and ammo. If the alarm spooked them, the order of march would scatter. The tanker would pull back under cover, and the command node would vanish behind hardpoints. The shot clock was already ticking. Human and machine split the workload cleanly. The software screamed jam. The crews verified. Thermal feed stayed crisp with no degradation, so the sensors weren't failing. IMU drift sat within norms, so the airframes weren't losing their minds. That meant the problem lived in the link, not the drones. Meanwhile, the spectral view showed a familiar interference shape. A fingerprint, not a random hiss, matching the behavior the teams had drilled on in previous runs. That is how they knew, and why they kept the mission live. Multi-drone correlation closed the "is it local or global" question. The interference profile labeled the source class link health analytics turned raw drops and jitter into a decision. In less than 10 seconds, they had enough to classify the threat, hold the triangle, and keep the column bracketed. Detection was step 1. Survival meant changing how the drones listened and navigated while the target stayed inside the box and the window kept shrinking. If GPS lies and the control link is under fire, what keeps an FPV drone from drifting off target in a 3-minute kill window? The answer sits inside the kill chain that Ukraine runs on short notice. Rear fires wait for coordinates and timing. In the middle, Mavic 3s hunt and fix, handing off target data. At the edge, Special forces push the line and clear the airspace for the strike. What binds it is the comms brain, a control stack that can shift bands, drop bandwidth on demand, and keep guidance stable when the air turns hostile. The LE3 did not back off after detection. It pushed harder. Broadband noise flooded the primary control band. The GPS pane showed a spoof risk, not a dropout. Frames that looked valid but did not line up with expected drift. The Convoy entered the strike box at speed. Resetting would lose the window. The control nodes executed the first counter with no debate. Jump. Frequency hopping spread spectrum kicked in across 3 channels, cycling through hundreds of steps each second. The goal was not to find a perfect frequency. It was to shrink the time spent on any one slot so the jammer could not sit on it long enough to break control. The sweep from the LE3 could chase a narrow signal. It struggled with a cascade that never stayed put. With each hop, the link cut dwell time and forced the jammer to waste power across a wider slice packet loss rows, but not past the threshold that kills steering. Control stayed coarse but workable. That bought seconds. Seconds turned into a pivot. The system then shifted the backbone. The control link moved down to L-band, lower frequency, better penetration, longer reach. Fewer neighbors in the spectrum trying to shout on the same lanes. The trade was clear. Less bandwidth, more resilience. Video feeds throttled, telemetry compressed, and the control signal thickened into a slower but tougher pipe. The jammer's primary profile favored the higher bands. Dropping below it took the fight where the LE3's sweep had less bite. Navigation had its own problem. Spoofing risk meant GPS could not be trusted for position fixes. The autopilot detached from satellite updates and relied on the inertial stack gyros and accelerometers took over to stabilize attitude and heading. Short windows are where IMU drift does not have time to hurt you. Over minutes, error grows. Over seconds, it holds tight. The Recon drones carried the relative truth, maintaining track on the Convoy and passing updates that the FPV birds could use without binding to false GPS frames. The choreography looked simple from the outside. The Mavic 3s kept classification live. Lead armor, fuel tanker, the command truck, the support tail. They pushed coordinates and target states at a reduced rate that the L-band link could stomach FPV drones committed to pre-validated attack vectors, with onboard waypoints that matched the road geometry and expected convoy speed. Link flicker did not break the run. Inertial cues and heading locks carried the airframes through gaps. Operators adjusted in course moves when packets came through and let the guidance hold in between. Under fire, the results stacked fast. The lead vehicles got pinned, forced to brake hard under threat of impact. The fuel tanker took the hit and erupted. The command vehicle lost mobility and power. 2 support trucks caught follow-on strikes and stopped dead. The rest froze or burned, and the road turned into a blockade the column could not bypass in time. Why switch to L-band? Because it gives a tougher, lower-frequency backbone that the jammer's main profile struggles to crush, and because IMU navigation can ride out GPS lies long enough to keep the nose on target. The jammer tried to blind. The network adapted, held lock, and closed the kill chain in under 180 seconds while the last burning truck choked the lane and the thermal feed settled into a wall of heat. The strike didn't win by shouting over the jammer. It won by thinking around it. Multi-link control kept steering alive when the primary band went toxic. Inertial backup carried guidance through the GPS lie decisions landed in seconds, not minutes, and the window stayed open long enough to break the column.